Starting to invest in Pokemon cards in 2025 is like trying to catch a legendary with a regular Pokeball. Intimidating and expensive. When I first considered treating Pokemon cards as an investment rather than a hobby, I quickly realized that there were strategies I wish I'd known from day one. From understanding which sets actually hold their value to knowing the difference between collecting and investing, I learned through costly trial and error. In this video, I'm breaking down exactly what I do if I start investing in Pokemon cards in 2025, so that you can build a portfolio that might actually appreciate instead of just looking pretty on your shelf. Let's dive in. When you're collecting, you buy cards because they make you happy. Maybe you love that Gengar illustration or you're trying to complete every Charizard ever printed. That's totally valid, but that might not be a good investment. Investing means you're buying cards with the primary goal of making money through appreciation or increase in value. You might not even like the Pokemon on that card, but if the data suggests it'll be worth more in 5 years, that's your target. It's less of gotta catch them all and more of gotta profit from them all. The good news is that you can absolutely do both collecting and investing, and today we're focusing more so on the investment side, which means we need to think like a business, not like a 10-year-old in a card shop with birthday money. And speaking of thinking strategically, let me break down the two main investment approaches that has worked for me in 2025. Now, before I begin any further, I do want to make sure that the information in this video shouldn't be construed as financial advice. Make sure to do your own research. The two-path strategy, sealed versus singles. Here's where most new investors make their first mistake. They try to do everything at once, but successful Pokemon card investing really comes down to two distinct paths, and you need to pick or at least be aware of each lane. Part 1, sealed product investment. This is the set it and forget approach. You can buy sealed products at MSRP, store them properly, and wait. Think of it as like the index fund of the Pokemon investing world. Less exciting day to day, but historically reliable. Part 2, raw and graded card investments. This requires more knowledge and active management. You're buying individual cards, potentially getting them graded, and timing the market. It's higher risk, higher reward, and definitely more hands-on. Most successful investors eventually do both, and if you're starting in 2025, I'd recommend picking one path first. Master it and then expand. Trying to juggle sealed products and individual card speculation from day one is like trying to evolve a Pokemon while still learning basic moves. So which path should you choose? Well, that depends on your personality, available space, and how much time you want to spend researching. Let's dive deeper into each of these approaches, starting with the one that's probably easier for beginners. Sealed product strategy. The long game. If you want to keep it easy and you've got the patience of a slowpoke, sealed product investing might be your best bet. The concept is beautifully simple. Buy sealed products at MSRP, store them properly, and hold them long term. But here's the thing. Not all sealed products are created equal. You can't just walk into Target, grab whatever's on the shelf, and expect it to fund your retirement, let alone that's if you find product anyways. There's actually a science to predicting which sets will hold value over time. And what makes a set valuable? First, popular Pokemon are king. I know, shocking revelation, right? But seriously, sets featuring iconic Pokemon like Charizard, Pikachu, Gengar, Rayquaza, Mewtwo, Lugia, or the Eevee evolutions consistently outperform sets focused on newer generation Pokemon. Take Prismatic Evolutions for example. It features all the Eevee evolutions, similar to how Evolving Skies performed with its Eevee Evolution VMAX cards. These aren't coincidences, they're patterns that you can invest around. The Pokemon Company has put themselves in an interesting position where older generations will always have that nostalgic appeal for collectors, while newer generation chase cards take much longer to appreciate. Can you imagine how a set would perform if it only featured Generation 8 Pokemon? People would still collect it, yes, but it would be infinitely more popular if Lugia, Charizard, Gengar, Mewtwo was sprinkled in there. Current sets worth watching. Right now, the sealed products I've been targeting for long-term holds are Pokemon 151, Prismatic Evolutions, and Destined Rivals. These sets check all the boxes. Popular Pokemon, strong artwork, and solid demand from both collectors and investors. Here's something that nobody talks about enough though. Sealed products take up serious space. Premium collection boxes stacked in your closet can quickly turn your home into a warehouse. And if you're looking to condense into smaller, still valuable items, focus on elite trainer boxes, and booster bundles. They offer better space to value ratios than those massive collection boxes. But what if you don't have the patience for the sealed product long-term game? What if you want more control over your investments? That's where individual cards come into play. Raw and graded card strategy, the active approach. If sealed products are like buying real estate and waiting for appreciation, individual cards are like day trading, but with more Pikachu, less than stress-induced hair loss. The beauty of focusing on individual cards is that you can be much more targeted with your investments. Instead of hoping on an entire set appreciates, you're betting on specific cards that you believe will increase in value. Here's what I do if I were starting fresh in 2025. Work backwards. Go to TCG Player right now and start studying the market prices of older sets. Look at which cards are commanding the highest prices and start identifying patterns. You'll quickly notice that older generation Pokemon tend to be the most valuable cards in any given set. This isn't just nostalgia, it's market data that you can use to make informed decisions about current and future releases. One area that's often overlooked is promotional cards featuring popular Pokemon. Promo cards tend to be more abundant initially, which means that they're often cheaper to acquire, but here's the kicker. Promo cards of fan favorite Pokemon have a strong track record of appreciating over time. The key is identifying which promos will become scarce. Tournament promos, special event cards, and limited time promotional releases often become highly sought out after years later. But just because a card has a promo stamp on it doesn't mean that it's going to be a good investment. I found that beautifully illustrated full art rares of the original 151 Pokemon on promos tend to have better chances of doing better. Take for example the Mew 51 promo, or the Snorlax promo, or the Charizard V promo, which all have started to recently increase in price. Now, grading your cards is where things can get spicy. Getting cards professionally graded can significantly increase their value, if they grade well. A PSA 10 Charizard is worth exponentially more than the same raw card in the raw condition, but grading is expensive, time-consuming, and risky. You might spend $50 to grade a card only to have it come back as a PSA 8, potentially making it worth less than if you'd kept it raw. My advice, start with raw cards, learn the market, and only consider grading once you can consistently identify cards that have a high probability of grading well. Now, regardless of which path you choose, there are certain Pokemon that are basically investment gold. Let me share which ones you should be paying attention to. The Hall of Fame, Pokemon that print money. If there's one thing I've learned from studying the Pokemon card market, it's that certain Pokemon are basically cheat codes for appreciation. These are the blue chip stocks of the Pokemon world. Charizard is obviously king. Any Charizard card from any set that's a hit or chase, but vintage Charizards and special illustration rares are particularly strong. It's like the Apple stock of Pokemon cards, sometimes overvalued but historically reliable. Pikachu is the mascot for a reason. Pikachu chase cards, especially unique artwork or special releases, have incredible staying power. Plus there's always new Pikachu content being released, which keeps demand consistent. The EV evolutions, Vaporeon, Espeon, Flareon, Umbreon, Glaceon, Sylveon, all of them, they're like a diversified portfolio in themselves. Collectors love completing the set, which creates consistent demand. Gengar has an incredibly dedicated fan base and consistently performs well across different sets. Lugia and Ho-Oh represent the legendary tier that appeals to both competitive players and collectors as well. Their cards often feature stunning artwork that ages well also. Rayquaza, Mewtwo, Mew, and the original legendary birds and legendary Entei, Suicune, and Raikou, these all round out the list of Pokemon that rarely disappoint from an investment perspective. And here's a pro tip. Start tracking which Pokemon get featured in high-end products. The Pokemon company isn't stupid. They know which characters sell. When you see a Pokemon getting the premium treatment across multiple products, that's usually a signal that it has a strong market appeal. But knowing which Pokemon to target is only half the battle. You also need to understand market timing, which brings us to our next crucial topic. Timing the market, when to buy, and when to hold. Unlike the stock market, the Pokemon card market has some unique timing patterns that you can actually use to your advantage. It's not perfectly predictable, but there are definitely trends worth understanding. New sets typically follow a predictable price pattern. Cards are more expensive right at release when supply is low and hype is high. Prices usually drop 4 to 6 weeks later after release as more product hits the market. Then if the set has something called staying power, prices gradually climb over the following months and years. In my opinion, this would mean the best time to buy for investment purposes is usually like 4 to 6 weeks after a set releases, when the initial hype has died down, but before the long-term appreciation begins. The Pokemon card market has seasonal patterns too. Prices often spike around the holidays when people are buying gifts, and they tend to dip in January and February when everyone's broke from holiday spending. Summer can be interesting because kids are out of school and have more time to focus on collecting, but it's also a time when many families are spending on vacations, and that money is being spent on vacations instead of cards. The nostalgia cycle is a big one for long-term investing. Pokemon cards tend to appreciate most when the generation that originally collected them reaches peak earning years. We've seen this now with base set cards as millennials hit their 20s and 30s and 40s. And if you're thinking long term, consider which generations of Pokemon will hit this nostalgia sweet spot in 5 to 10 years. And speaking of long term thinking, let's talk about the 3 pillars that determine whether your Pokemon card investments will actually pay off. The 3 pillars of successful Pokemon investing. After studying the market and investing myself, I've identified 3 core principles that separate the winners from the people trying to convince themselves that their collection is basically an investment. Pillar 1. Understanding what determines a valuable set. Not all sets are created equal, and understanding why some sets appreciate while others stagnate is crucial. Valuable sets typically have several characteristics. They feature popular Pokemon, showcase exceptional artwork, and generate genuine demand from both collectors and players and investors. Sets that become valuable long term usually have what I call crossover appeal. They attract vintage collectors and modern collectors and competitive players and casual fans. Pokemon 151 is a perfect example of this phenomenon. Pillar 2. Knowing which Pokemon are actually popular. This sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people invest based on their personal favorites rather than the market data. Your love for Dunsparce and Bidoof doesn't translate to market demand, unfortunately. Study completed sales data, not just listing prices. Look at which cards consistently sell for premium prices across different platforms and conditions and time periods. This data will guide your investment decisions far better than your childhood memories. Pillar 3. Understanding market trends. The Pokemon card market doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's influenced by video game releases, anime seasons, movie announcements, new releases, and broader economic conditions. Successful investors stay informed about these external factors. For example, when a new Pokemon game features a particular Pokemon prominently, cards featuring that Pokemon may often see an increase in demand. When the economy is uncertain, luxury collectibles like Pokemon cards can be affected. Now, these 3 pillars do work together. A set featuring popular Pokemon with great artwork released during a favorable market trend is your ideal investment target. Here's something that most investors often overlook until it's too late. Tracking your investments properly. You might think you remember what you paid for your Charizard 6 months ago, but trust me, your memory isn't as good as you think, especially when you're dealing with dozens or hundreds of cards. This is where apps like Collector or Pokélytics become absolute game changers for serious investors. I'll leave links to both of them down below because honestly, trying to track your card investments without proper tools is like trying to navigate without GPS when you don't know where you're going. The psychological benefits to tracking your cards are huge too. When you can see your portfolio's total value increasing over time, it reinforces good investment habits and helps you stay patient during market fluctuations. Conversely, if you notice certain types of cards consistently underperforming, you can adjust your investing strategy accordingly. These apps also help with tax planning if your investments become substantial enough to matter. In the investment world, data beats intuition every time. But even with tracking, there are still mistakes that can torpedo your returns. Let me share the biggest pitfalls to avoid. Common mistakes that kill returns. Here's the thing. I don't want your Pokemon portfolio to crash and burn just because you make these mistakes. And usually this happens to people because they picked the wrong cards or because they made easily avoidable mistakes that destroyed their returns. Mistake number 1 is paying above MSRP for current products. And this is a big one. If you're paying scalper prices for current products, you're already starting at a disadvantage. Your cards need to appreciate enough to overcome that initial markup before you even break even. Be patient. Use tools like PokeNotify to track restocks and buy at retail prices. The extra profit margin from buying at MSRP versus inflated prices can make the difference between a successful investment and a costly lesson. Mistake 2. Focusing only on chase cards. Everyone wants that rare Charizard, but successful investors understand that sometimes the boring cards provide better returns. Full arts, popular Pokemon, and even some uncommon cards can appreciate significantly over time. Diversification isn't just for stock portfolios, it applies to Pokemon cards too. Mistake 3. Poor storage and condition management. You can pick the perfect cards and time the market perfectly, but if your card gets damaged in storage, your investment is worthless. Invest in proper storage from day one. Penny sleeves, top loaders, and climate-controlled storage aren't optional, they're part of your investment infrastructure. Mistake 4. Emotional decision-making. This ties back to the collecting versus investing distinction. If you find yourself buying cards because they're cool, or rather than because they fit your investment thesis, you're collecting, not investing. Now, there's nothing wrong with collecting, but don't fool yourself into thinking it's an investment strategy. Mistake 5, ignoring liquidity. Some cards might appreciate in value, but be incredibly difficult to sell when you want to cash out. Consider the liquidity of your investments. Popular Pokemon in recognizable conditions from well-known sets are much easier to sell than obscure cards from forgotten sets. Now let's talk about putting this all together into a practical action plan you can start implementing today. Now, if I was to start investing in Pokemon cards in 2025, here's my action plan. Month 1, education and setup. I'd start by spending serious time on TCG Player, eBay sold listings, and other marketplaces studying prices. Don't buy anything just yet, just learn. Identify which cards and sets have been appreciating and try to understand why. I'd set up my storage system, buy penny sleeves, top loaders, storage boxes, and I'd also create a spreadsheet to track investments, including purchase price, date, condition, and current market value. Month 2, my first purchases. I'd start with small 2 to 3 sealed products from current sets that fit my investment criteria. I'd focus on products that I can buy MSRP. Elite Trainer boxes are a good starting point. They're affordable, don't take up too much space, and have a solid track record, but they're just really hard to obtain right now. In my opinion, the best places that I've been able to get ETBs at MSRP is from Target and the actual Pokemon Center themselves through PokeNotify. Alternatively, I could also buy 5 to 10 individual cards of popular Pokemon from recent sets. I'd focus on cards in near mint condition that I could acquire below market prices from third-party marketplaces like Facebook and OfferUp. I would also aim for a good portion of these cards to be Black Star promos. Between months 3 and 6, I'd build my foundation. I'd gradually expand my holdings, but stick to my criteria. I wouldn't get distracted by every new release or trending cards. I'd focus on a solid foundation of proven performers, and I'd start tracking my portfolio's performance monthly. This isn't just about knowing what my cards are worth, it's about understanding which of my investment decisions are actually working and which aren't. Now, month 6 and beyond, this is for refinement and growth. By now, I should have enough data to refine my strategy. I would double down on what's working and eliminate what's not. I'd consider expanding into graded cards if I've mastered the raw card market, and I'd also start thinking about my exit strategy. Am I holding for 5 years, 10 years? Having a plan would help me avoid emotional decisions when prices fluctuate. Here's how I'd allocate $1,000 starting investment budget in 2025. 40% of that would go for sealed products from proven sets, Pokemon 151, Prismatic Evolutions. 35% would go into individual cards from popular Pokemon from recent sets. 15 to 20% would go into vintage cards if I can find it at a good price. And 10% is going to be for any opportunities that may arise as far as just liquid cash goes. If I were starting to invest in Pokemon cards in 2025, I'd focus on education first, execution second. The market rewards knowledge and patience while punishing impulse decisions and FOMO. Remember the 3 pillars. Understand what makes a set valuable, know which Pokemon have lasting appeal, and stay informed about market trends. Avoid the common mistakes that kill returns, and don't let emotions drive your investment decisions. Now, if you want to learn more in depth about how to start collecting sealed product, make sure to watch this video next.